Killer's favorite chicken. The KFC down the block from my apartment had the creepiest statue of Colonel Sanders I've ever seen. It stood in a corner of the dining room, at least 8 feet tall, looming over customers as they scarfed down chicken and mashed potatoes. No one ever sat at the table closest to the statue. There was just a bad vibe the closer you got to the thing. Cold spots. Weird smells. A sense that you were being watched. The creepy statue didn't stop me from eating at the KFC at least twice a week, but it did dampen the experience. It was eerie how lifelike the sculpture looked, the perfect white hair and goatee, the wrinkles under the eyes, the ivory pale suit, and just a peak of pink tongue inside of square teeth. You half expected the giant thing to clear its throat at any moment. Like I said, weird but manageable as a customer. Once I started working part-time at that KFC one winter to try to save up extra for gifts, though, that's when I swore off fast food for good. Things weren't too bad until they moved me to the night shift about a month into my time at the restaurant. If the Colonel Sanders statue was creepy during the day, it was downright freaky at night. The face always seemed a little different to me each time I glanced at it, the eyes a bit colder. I started taking pictures of the statue each night to check if I was crazy or if it really was changing. However, no matter the angle or lighting, the pics always turned out blurry on my phone. I didn't much enjoy going to work that winter, but I managed to push through it because the pay kept going up. Even after the holidays, I decided to stay on since I was now making enough to actually save up money for the first time in my life. Then, one night in January, I made a terrible mistake. I offered to close the KFC on my own after the night shift. Mandy was supposed to help me. She's a cute redhead that started around the same time as I did. But she was feeling ill, so I offered to handle closing solo. I was trying to score some points with her before working up the courage to ask her on a date. After that awful night, I never saw Mandy again. Once the last customers were gone, I began my closing process. I locked the doors. I turned off the main lights, then I pulled out a Bluetooth speaker, placed it on a table in the dining room, and started to mop up while jamming to some classic rock. I wiped down all of the surfaces except that table near the Sanders statue. Again, nobody sat there, so it was always pristine. I worked fast. We had an official policy to only ever close with 2 or more staff on site. The official reason was for safety and accountability, but as the minutes ticked by that night, I began to feel like someone was moving around the restaurant just out of my sight. I was about to start cleaning the bathrooms when I heard a commotion from the kitchen. "Mandy?" I called out, holding my mop up for self-defense, I guess. There was a scraping sound followed by silence. I hopped over the counter, still holding onto the mop like it was a club. Something had knocked over the warming station in the back of the kitchen. It's a series of metal shelves and heat lamps that we use to keep food hot. It was heavy, too, far too heavy for a draft or rat. Yeah, we had rats to displace. I leaned the mop against the wall and pushed the warming station back into position. When I turned back towards the dining room, I yelped. The Colonel Sanders statue had moved while I wasn't looking. It hadn't shifted much, just a slight turn of the head, but it was unmistakably different than it was moments before. His eyes were wider, almost black in the low light, and his smile was sharper than before, wider. "I'm imagining this," I said out loud, clutching the mop so hard my knuckles popped. That statue didn't respond. I mean, of course it didn't, it was a friggin' statue after all. Nothing but plaster and paint. Still, I decided to rush through the bathroom cleaning and risk getting a reprimand from my supervisor at my next shift. "Hey, are you here alone?" A raspy voice asked me from farther back in the kitchen. I froze. "Mandy?" I asked again, still not turning to look. "No. Sorry. Not Mandy." The voice was male with a slight accent I couldn't place. Swallowing hard, I turned to look for the source. There was something wrong with the light at the back of the kitchen. Everything was cast in a deep, unnatural shade. I saw a figure within the gloom, a shadow darker than the shadows around it, shaped like a man. "Who are you?" I asked. I couldn't see its face, but I had the impression the shadow smiled. "I was many things," it said. "A soldier, a chef, a business owner. Human. Now what I am is, here. With you. Did you say that you were alone, or did I imagine that?" My mouth was dry. I was having a hard time speaking. There was a loud creak from behind me in the dining room. Then another. I glanced back quickly, not wanting to take my eyes off of the shadow in the kitchen for too long. The Colonel Sanders statue had moved again. Now it was standing in the middle of the dining room, partially hunched over like it was trying to sneak. Or getting ready to leap. "Do you know why I started calling these places KFC?" the shadow asked. I turned back around to find that it was closer to me, too. The light in all of the kitchen was dim now and growing darker by the minute. I felt trapped between 2 hungry things just waiting for me to run so they could chase me. All I could think to do was stall for time. "KFC, well it means Kentucky Fried?" "No," the shadow man growled, "that's what they made me call it."
But KFC originally stood for the kind of crowd I wanted to bring into my restaurants.
Killer's favorite chicken. That creak again from behind me. I knew the statue was moving in the dining room. There was the sound of heavy dragging, tables being pushed out of the way. I wanted to turn and look but didn't want to put my back to the shadow in the kitchen. Any moment, I expected to feel a giant, plaster hand reach around the back of my neck and squeeze. A bell rang softly. Suddenly, the light was back to normal in the kitchen. "Nick?" A familiar voice called out. "Why are you standing behind the counter holding up a mop?" It was Mandy. She'd come in from the front door, unlocking it with her staff key. The bell was above that door and sounded any time a customer came in. I put the mop down and leaned against the counter. There was no sign of the shadow thing in the kitchen. When I looked out over the dining room, I saw that the Colonel Sanders statue was back in its usual corner exactly how it was at the start of my shift. But the face was different, the smile tighter, its fist clenched in frustration. "Geez, Nick, you look awful," Mandy said, walking toward me. "What are you doing here?" I felt guilty asking you to close up solo. I figured I would help you finish up. Nick? Nick, are you okay? You look like you're going to throw up." Without a word, I hopped over the counter, took Mandy's hand, and walked us both out of the KFC without locking up. Just as the front door was closing, I heard another creak as if some massive, plaster figure was shifting to watch us leave. That was the last time I stepped foot in a KFC or any other restaurant. I quit the next morning, calling my manager to make sure that she knew it was my fault the place wasn't closed properly. I didn't want Mandy to get in trouble, though I did beg her to find somewhere else to work. She promised she'd think about it. I never did work up the nerve to ask her out. I ended my lease early and moved out of the city within a month. I've got a new place now, smaller but comfortable enough. I don't leave my apartment much these days. I'm able to work from home and I get all of my food delivered. The rare times I step outside for a walk, well, I walk fast. Maybe it's my imagination, but sometimes it feels like something is out there looking for me just out of sight. On the worst days, I'll see a brief flash of white moving fast out of my vision. When I sleep, which isn't often, I dream of creaking sounds and shadows where they shouldn't be.